Got about 54 more minutes, so let's get right into our next interview. The Honorable Attorney General of our island, Leevin Camacho, joins us now in the KUM News Zoom room. Chris and Bree are standing by. Mr. Attorney General, good morning, Hapade, and welcome home.
Good morning, Jason. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, AG. And we're going to go ahead and get right into it as your office released two pieces of surveillance video relative to the shooting that involved an off-duty police officer. We're going to go ahead and pop these videos up, AG. Obviously, we did kind of zoom in a little bit and also tried to make as clear as we could the quality of the video. It almost looked like they need to wipe one of the cameras on one of those pieces of footage. But again, in the zooming in, we did, in one clip, it appears that the off-duty officer's vehicle is struck by an individual with some type of weapon. I mean, right off the bat, I thought it looked like a machete. Not really sure, but he does appear to
strike the car,
and then the car keeps going, but then walking off, you see him kind of raise up whatever that item that was in his hand. So in looking at the other piece of footage, we're able to see the off-duty officer's car go down the hill, and then you also see a few individuals kind of like running after it, right? And that's all we got. And so I just wanted to kind of ask, are there any other surveillance footage angles that you're looking at or considering the release of?
Well, Chris, I guess I'll just take a step back and talk about how we got here. Last week we had a press conference just as this event, it's literally 1 week ago that this case started. And at that point, we were unable to really give much information. And I know the media was not happy with that. We were just kind of laying out the process. I was on maybe a month ago to talk about this independent investigative team. And Bree had asked, who makes up the team? And we just going, this is a change in the way that we've done things traditionally. Mm-hmm. And it's, I think sorely needed to write it down. In this situation, we put it out there. I looked at my phone and I had a missed call from Chief, and I went back. It was within 15 or 20 minutes of this incident occurring. So the two parts of it was an immediate notification. Our office does not traditionally respond to a scene. So I just explaining to people, this is not normal. Usually a GPD will handle everything. They will forward the investigation. They'll forward it to us. But kudos to Chief Ignacio for being sensitive to people who are out there saying, we can't trust the police to investigate their own. We're there just to make sure that the processes are followed. GPD has extremely qualified and trained personnel. This is a team. This is not an AG investigation. We are relying on their forensics folks. We are relying on their ballistics folks as we move forward in this investigation. And we're also going to improve it. I mean, this is, again, we just had a meeting 6 weeks ago, and I don't think anyone anticipated that we would be called on to activate this team in such a short period of time. What I can tell you, Chris, is that part of that change is recognizing the public's need to know a little bit more about what happened as soon as we can release materials. And the two factors as to why we released it yesterday instead of earlier, one, we want to make sure that the family is going to be given courtesy updates before we make it publicly known out of respect to them for the individual who was shot. And two, we want to make sure that we conduct all critical interviews with witnesses so that there will be no accusations that we put footage out there to somehow taint the witnesses and taint the testimony that would get subsequent to that. But I can tell you, based on the interviews that we conducted prior to the release, it does corroborate that one of the individuals who was in the surveillance footage had two machetes and approached the vehicle. So I can confirm that based on other interviews that we've conducted. The IIT, we put it in the release yesterday, they've interviewed 15 people in the last week, and we're planning to have the forensic autopsy this weekend. And I believe there's a few other reports that they've requested, but we're moving fast on this case because we just recognize again that this is where we're at now. The media, you guys, the public, things are circulating on social media within hours of these incidents. So we need to respond appropriately and not no comment our way to 3 or 4 months. And there's going to be times where I can't say things just to protect the integrity of the investigation. but I hope that you guys understand that I'm genuine when I say, when we can release information to you, we will. And when we can give interviews, even if we can't give you substantive answers, we can at least explain to you why we can't release it and where we are at in the process.
Well, we can definitely appreciate that, AG. Because you're right. I mean, you know, and if this was last year, we would be sitting here waiting, you know, 3 months before hearing anything. So you're right. It does kind of do its part to appease the public's right to know.
So you're anticipating any or conducting any more interviews? You said you had 15.
We've completed our primary. I think we've completed all the key witnesses at this point. So I don't know if there's any more interviews. We did receive numerous calls to the hotline. That was very helpful for us. We received links to media, and again, we're putting it all together to paint a better picture of what happened, and that'll be part of a larger presentation that we can do when we're ready.
You said that one of the individuals in the surveillance video approached the vehicle. Are you talking about the initial footage that we played where it appears the vehicle was struck, or are you talking about after that?
You know, Chris, I don't want to get into too much of the details of it, and I can tell you that within the next week we will have another update, and it'll paint a much better picture. I know, you know, there are questions still out there, and the video isn't conclusive in terms of what happened, but I can tell you that it is the witness interviews and the surveillance footage do paint a better picture of what happened that day.
But it doesn't paint the complete picture, though.
Well, I mean, as in any case, Chris, you're going to have to go big. You know, there's going to be, and I will say that the surveillance footage helps. I mean, we've been in situations where there's no footage, and it's just a matter of an officer's testimony against nobody, right? Mm-hmm. And so in this case, we do have the benefit of having an independent. There's not going to be accusations. I've already heard, you know, that our office is planting evidence, and we take our jobs very seriously here. And the only way that we are going to build trust is to be transparent about it. But you know, when you have surveillance footage and something independent, we're not going to doctor footage. I can tell you that. So those are the things that we're having to deal with. There's just a lot of distrust. And I mean, we talk about a crisis in confidence. That's where we're at right now. We're supposed to be honest about it. So the more that we can do to be transparent about our process and to give the public as much information as we can, that's part of the rebuilding the trust, or building on the trust for both our office and law enforcement and the criminal justice system as a whole.
Okay.
And you know, I do want to, this was part of the officer involved. So we call it independent investigative team. And it was initially going to be focused just on the use of deadly force where there's death or serious bodily injury. We've expanded it to include other cases where the public interest kind of would weigh in favor of our office being involved. And the Jerry's Kitchen investigation is a good example of that, where you know, it wasn't an officer who was involved in a shooting and no one was seriously hurt, but the chief thought it was best to refer it to our office. We did. Our investigators went out, conducted some supplementary investigation, and you know, we charged that case out, and it's going to follow the normal process. But that's just an example of a case where it wasn't an officer-involved shooting, but the IIT or our office was heavily involved in that as well.
AG, are you able to say at this point how many shots were fired in this incident?
I believe that it was a single shot was fired. And so the autopsy is going to occur on Sunday. That's just based on the information that we've received, but we will be able to confirm that hopefully early next week.
Are you able to say if it was like a duty weapon that was used?
I don't have that information, Bree.
I guess this is a big what if, but in the event that you find that an individual approached the vehicle and made a threat to the safety of the off-duty officer, would you anticipate that maybe no charges would be filed, or is it too early to ask that question?
It's too early, Chris. Yeah, it's too early. But I will say, and again, just the last officer-involved incident, we presented to grand jury, and I don't think people understand the significance of that. It was the first time, my understanding, in over a decade that our office had presented a case like that to the grand jury for consideration. The grand jury determined that there wasn't probable cause to proceed with charges against the officer. And for us, the focus is always on process. You know, I mean, outcome, we can't control the outcome of when you go to a jury or a grand jury. But if we're following the same process that we get indictments against individuals, just we're trying to go through it. So if there are cases that it's questionable whether or not the use of force was justified, we've already demonstrated this year that we're prepared to present those types of cases to the grand jury for consideration.
So where are you guys in finalizing that lethal force policy? Because I know this case happened.
We're planning on meeting within the next week or two, and this is actually the SOP itself is pretty straightforward. We've followed it right now, so we already have a map laid out with or without signatures as to what will happen in these circumstances. The next project for our office, we've already started drafting the actual use of force policy that we're hoping to share with all law enforcement and to hopefully get wholesale adoption of it so that, and then the third piece of that's going to be training. And that's something that we're also looking at bringing folks to and emphasizing training.
Okay.
There's no use in making all these changes and then people don't know what the policies are and there's more
Right.
confusion than anything.
You meant,
Go ahead.
sorry. Are you done with the?
Yeah,
Okay. You mentioned Jerry's Kitchen. Is there any update on?
I just, Chris, again, I don't follow all these cases. I saw in the news that it was reported there was an arraignment that happened, but it's gonna follow the traditional process. The one thing that was unique about it was we were involved in the investigation stage of it, but once it's charged, it's just gonna follow the standard process.
I don't know if you had an opinion, AG, but we did want to ask. This is a question coming from Nestor here. What's your take on arbitration versus the use of a magistrate judge for medical malpractice claims?
I've seen the debate. I don't really, as an office, we're not going to take a position on it, but it's, I think you kind of see on both sides, you have these families that are dealing with tragedy or people who, have been injured. And on the other hand, you have doctors coming out and saying, we're not going to be able to provide services and people are going to have to fly off island. So it's going to be a tough policy call. I don't envy the senators who are in this debate. The one thing I will say, Chris, is that access to the courts is always going to be an issue. I mean, I've had in private practice people who can't file custody cases because they don't have the money to even, $350 is the filing fee, not including hiring an attorney. So there are all kinds of cases where people unfortunately are priced out of getting access to the courts, and it is unfortunate. And kudos to the Guam Legal Services, Micronesian Legal Services, who are out there who are providing legal services for free to those who qualify. But again, when I was in private practice, you had folks who would go there and kind of, I don't want to say game the system, but get interviewed by everyone and then try to exclude the other party from getting any attorneys. So access to the courts is always going to be an issue. And this is no different. I will also say litigation isn't cheap either. I mean, I know that they're talking about arbitration, but once you get into court, it's not smooth sailing,
right.
Especially when there are experts involved. So this idea that getting straight to the court is going to be any less expensive.
It's an interesting idea, right? AJ, can we also get your reaction to the Supreme Court ruling on the governor's emergency health powers? I know that people are thinking it's significant because it declared a section of the Emergency Health Powers Act inorganic, but it also confirmed the governor's authority in this public health emergency. So what was your reaction to that ruling?
Well, we've been involved in this, and I don't want to go back and look at the first interview I gave on these quarantine cases, but for us, it's always been a question of who should make public health decisions, the public health officials or the courts. I was able to confirm this morning, our office has in the last year been involved in over 200 quarantine cases with about 50 of them actually requiring court hearings. For our purposes, what the Supreme Court's opinion confirmed is that what we've been arguing, that these types of measures should be upheld if they are related to a public health emergency and don't constitute a plain invasion of a constitutional right. And we've never taken the position that there's no limits to quarantine. We've always believed that the Constitution is going to be the backstop. But as we're developing quarantine policy, I think the court got it right in according the appropriate deference to our medical community and public health officials.
I wanted to ask if there was any follow-up to the ORDOT case from the Supreme Court, any filings or anything. What's the latest?
what's going on with that. So, and I know we're going to talk about a bit, but one of the things that I was at, we have an AGA, Attorneys General Alliance, or Conference of Western Attorneys General, and emergency health powers and environmental justice issues were both topics of discussion. So I actually led a panel on environmental justice to talk about the ORDOT case and the Supreme Court decision that was issued. But there was a very interesting, I don't know if you guys have read about the King gold mine in New Mexico. Basically, these mines blew up and it dumped all this toxic waste into the rivers. But where we're at now with that, our judge has been appointed to the Court of Appeals. We're going to get a new judge, and I think I've mentioned that we're going to file a status update. We're already in communication with the Department of Justice to kind of map out what the next steps are going to be, and which would include discovery and exchange of information, as well as setting a trial date. We are going to be planning on putting out, and I'll share with you guys, we just got off the phone yesterday, but we're going to be putting a call out for individuals who have witnesses potentially, and they said truck drivers actually would be the ones who are driving the materials and dumping them, eyewitnesses, firsthand account of what was happening up at ORDOT. Because as you guys are aware, the Department of Justice took a position at the Supreme Court that they didn't dump anything up there, they didn't own the dump, and we just know that that's not true. So we've got to take our next steps and prove that up, put together our best case.
Are you able to provide any info on the procurement of a financial management system for the government of Guam?
We're working with the Department of Administration, Chris, and unfortunately, the law sometimes makes things go slower. So the ARPA or ARP came out, I believe the guidance on that was just issued in about 2 months ago. And this is new for everyone, and we want to make sure that we get it right when we're using these funds. We don't want the government of Guam to be on the hook to pay back millions of dollars if we don't spend it within the parameters. So we're working with the Department of Administration. We understand how important that project is, but at this point, it's just trying to navigate. And we're not the only ones. I believe states and territories across the country are struggling with what these categories mean. 2 of them are pretty straightforward. Is it related to the public health emergency? It's, I think, the third one, which is the reduced revenue model, and the way that you can use funds into that situation. It's a lot less clear what that category, what is a justified expense. So we're working the best we can, but again, this is not like the final rule hasn't even been put out yet, Chris. So we're kind of working off of the interim rule and guidance at this point.
I just wanted to ask about the lifting of the moratorium on evictions. You guys seeing a flood of concerns or inquiries into your office?
We haven't. I'll have to check with our consumer folks if we've seen an increase in that. I know that the commercial moratorium was lifted a few months ago, and from the residential side, we've been fielding calls. We've been providing the general letters, just letting people know you can't go and change locks and evict in that way, and focusing on you have to do it right, which is going and getting a court order. But I'm not aware if we've seen a rush of them, probably because you have to give 30 days worth of notice before you do it. But yeah. I know our consumer team has been heavily involved in that.
Can we get an update on the search for a medical examiner?
We're still looking. We were able to contract with another, so we have 3 doctors now who are on rotation, and I believe one of the newer doctors is the one who's scheduled to come out this weekend to perform the forensic autopsy in the officer involved incident. So we haven't secured a long-term solution, but we were kind of building out our contract doctors to, I believe 2 weeks is about, currently 2 to 3 weeks is the estimate it takes to get someone out, and it depends on when the notification goes out as well. But we're doing things as quickly as we can on the forensic side.
Where's so if you could, so you have 3 doctors now. One is from Saipan. Where are the other couple?
So the doctor from Saipan is actually for the non-forensic autopsies. So currently the non-forensic autopsies are performed by a doctor at GMH and Dr. Dotterman when necessary. We have doctor from Hawaii, Dr. Ishikawa, Dr. Lang, who is from Hawaii, I believe now is relocated to Florida, Michigan. So those are the 3 contracted attorneys that we have for forensic autopsies. Dr. Ishikawa, Dr. Lang, and Dr. Brown. Those are the 3 that I can recall.
Leevin, can you provide an update on the Michael Castro case?
I don't have anything for you at this point, Bree. I kind of been involved in this other incident. But if as soon as we can release any more information, we'll get that out to you.
AJ, I wanted to ask, and it is relative to the Michael Castro case, and then maybe, I don't know if you could speak in generalities if you can't speak to specifics, but we had the chief of police on, and I know that there has been obviously an arrest of Nicholas Moore, but the chief had told us that this was still an ongoing investigation, right? So how do you kind of move forward with a trial when you have a suspect, but at the same time the investigation is not closed? I mean, does that stand? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I mean, again, Chris, kind of going back to the process. So to get a warrant to start a case, probable cause is what's necessary. I believe the next stage in that case is going to be presentation of the evidence to the grand jury, and for the grand jury to decide whether or not they believe there's probable cause to proceed with the charges that have been presented. But we're always going to keep an eye on proving our case beyond a reasonable doubt. We're not going to initiate a case unless we feel confident with the evidence that we have. And I know this is another instance where our office was involved early on in the investigation stages, just to kind of bounce ideas and just to be in the loop. So in terms of the investigation ongoing, I don't think that's anything new or unique to this case. Things are always changing, and you get a lead, you kind of want to charge. When you feel confident in the evidence you have, then you can file charges, and then you kind of see where it goes from there. So that's probably what Chief was referring to after charges were filed. Now people are aware, and then maybe something that didn't stand out to you, or you kind of you noticed didn't make sense, and then now something happens that, okay, wait a minute, I have this information. So just natural flow of a case.
Good.
Yeah.
Anything in closing, AG, that we didn't ask about that controversial?
I'm gonna quit while I'm ahead, Chris. I promise. There's always a lot of things going on, and just a reminder to to everyone that prosecution is what we come on for. But cannabis is one of the topics for this that's always going to be an issue. I know recently that the governor just approved it. That's with our office, and we're hoping to complete our review and move that forward. I know people are waiting. One of the big things that we've talked about and AGs are concerned about regulators is kind of the consumer protection side of cannabis products. And it was interesting they used craft beer as an example, where everyone knows alcohol, ABV, right? But then you have these like, how hoppy is it, IBU, and all these other things. And most people have no idea. You just drink a beer and okay, it tastes good or it doesn't taste good. But one of the issues that's coming up across the country is the labeling. I mean, they track these products for cannabis really well, but the labeling, people don't understand them. So they're giving an example of someone who, for the first time, had an edible, didn't understand potency, didn't know how to read it, didn't feel anything after 30 minutes and started eating a few more.
Ooh.
And then, after an hour or two, they consumed way too much and were freaking out. So those are the things that you're kind of hearing from a consumer protection side. What our concern is that once we start rolling products out, is our community going to understand this is not, I think they said, this isn't your granddad's joint at Woodstock, right? This isn't a CNK concert at Greyhound anymore. These are highly potent manufactured and processed products. And that's one of the things that we're considering on how we can give better guidance to our community and to our agency clients.
All right, there you go. Bree, don't do edibles.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
AG. All right, there you go. I don't know. Our grandpas had the super sativa. We're going to take a break. Good.